So Hassan's uncle, Cenk Uygur, who's a co-founder of the Young Turks, in which Hassan used to work on, to my understanding. Well, Cenk had this really weird rant about Asmongold recently, and it's filled with a lot of cope, where he's trying to like act like he doesn't know who Asmongold is, despite the fact that, you know, this guy is completely in the realm of an industry where you would expect him to know who Asmongold is, given that he's like a live political commentator, and that Hassan himself constantly cries about Asmongold. So you would just expect Cenk to probably know who Asmon is. It seems kind of like a lie, at least in my opinion. And then he does this impression of Asmongold that's really just an impression of Alex Jones, and he's trying to act like Asmongold sounds like Alex Jones or something. It's just a really, really weird clip. I'll play it for you. Let me know what you think.
Hey, if you're a Democrat and you're criticizing the right wing, now think about it if the shoe was on the other foot. Now this brother comes along. I don't know who Assman is. I mean, people say maybe that he's got a following, but I've never heard of him, right? And his co-conspirator Jägermeister or whatever, right? But this guy's talking about, oh yeah, run over protesters. I don't mind it, he said. So you don't mind extreme violence, running over somebody with a car, okay? But you know what? Why don't we instead arrest them for exercising one of the most fundamental American rights, freedom of speech? The one, remember, that you guys all pretended you were in favor of? I know some of them meant it, but apparently a lot of them, including Assman and Jägermeister, didn't mean it. They thought, oh, freedom of speech for me, to say that maybe you should be murdered or be made my slave. My freedom of speech, good. And by the way, I wouldn't cancel that. I don't mind him saying the terrible things that he says. Now we know who he is. So, and I'm not afraid of his speech. I'm not afraid that the majority of Americans are going to look at that and go, oh yeah, well, I think we should, instead of having freedom of speech, if anyone exercises freedom of speech in a way that I don't like politically, we should arrest them, take away all their rights, make sure they can't vote, and then turn them into slaves.
To me, this guy really comes off like he wrote down 100 terrible points and then like chugged a few Red Bulls and was like, how many of these terrible points can I get through in like a 1-minute clip? And then here comes the Alex Jones impression.
No, 98% of Americans are going to be against that. But Assman thinks that's a great idea. So he's like, oh yeah, I'm for freedom of speech, unless it's left-wingers. How dare they protest our government? Let's take away all their rights. Did you see what he said? Make sure they can't ever vote again. And I don't know if his followers were like, what an idiot. We said freedom of speech, dumbass, okay? Or if they're like, yeah, we hate freedom of speech now that we're in charge. Let's turn them into slaves. Are 13 people watching that show? Who would like that kind of monstrously un-American piece of crap like that, who doesn't believe in America at all?
I mean, I don't consume content like this. I can't imagine that Asmongold, whatever his name is, I can't imagine that he is watching this show right now either.
I always find it so trashy and immature when people try to insult Asman by like intentionally butchering his name with the most grade school level insults you could possibly imagine. And to me, when people do that, it doesn't make Asman look bad. It actually makes them look bad. Anyways, here's part of Asman's response.
This guy's talking about, oh yeah, run over protesters. I don't mind it, he said.
Yes.
So you don't mind extreme violence, running over somebody with a car, okay?
Well, yeah, if they block your road, yeah, absolutely. If they don't let you try to get by and they crowd your car, I think you absolutely should be able to run them over. And you can see how, and this is what I think is very funny about this, is that people like this always like misrepresenting. This is why I don't debate with people. It's because they're just liars. Like, you can't debate and argue and, have a conversation with a person whenever they're not operating on the same wavelength as you are. So when you have somebody like Cenk who's saying like, oh, well, you're just trying to run over protesters, etc., you're not even trying to engage with the conversation. You're not even trying to understand the point of view that I'm putting forward. You're intentionally misunderstanding it in order to make an argument, which is like, that's fine. You want to do that, go ahead and do that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to take it seriously, okay?
I think it's pretty interesting how Cenk on the Young Turks is supposed to be this like official sort of political commentator, and he just comes off super immature and unhinged and just like rage aggro mode. And then you have Asman, who's like not technically a political commentator like the Young Turks try and present himself as, right? Or Cenk tries to present himself as, but he's much more level-headed and actually logical in the stuff that he's saying. Not to just like sit here glazing Asman, but I think anyone looking at this objectively would come to a similar assessment. Cenk's over there raging, sounding like a weirdo, and Asman's just talking normally about this all. Anyways, back to the clip. Asman moves on from the discussion about how certain violent protesters, or you could just say rioters, have surrounded and physically banged on vehicles, making the driver, of course, fear for their safety. And in other cases, for example, here's what he gets at next, where we've seen like riots in LA, where federal agents are attacked by rioters who are throwing rocks at the cops, whether they're in vehicles or not.
So I view throwing a rock at a person as deadly force. And so because a police officer is a person, I think that if you threw a rock at a police officer should be able to respond with deadly force by shooting you. That's my logic. That's my reasoning. And that's also Florida's logic and Florida's reasoning. That's exactly what Florida does. So if you're mad at me for saying this, that's totally okay. But you also have to understand that there is an entire state in our country that has the exact same viewpoint on this than I do. Don't try to act like I'm some extreme radical or some crazy person when there are states with millions of people in it that agree with this. And I think that most people agree with this too at a very fundamental level. Like if somebody threw a rock at Cenk Uygur, I would say that if you wanted to shoot that guy, go ahead. Like if somebody's trying to hit you in the head with a rock, I mean, what are we talking about here? Why are we trying to rationalize and justify violent, aggressive behavior from people that are trying to destroy property and actively trying to subvert the law? That's it. Nobody wants to have rocks thrown at them. Nobody wants to have anything like this happen to them. It's insane that we should expect police officers to be punching bags. It's unfair to them. It's entitled to the people who are angry. And it's also just the wrong thing to do.
Well, yeah, they're only fine with it because it's coming from their side. If it was like people they disagree with, they would be outspoken against this stuff. But since it's their side, they're like totally fine with it. Same thing we see on Twitch with Hassan, right? Like they literally protect Hassan. And then people who do far less grievous things than Hassan has done, well, they get banned. Now, moving on from Cenk Uygur, we've got a little update about Hassan here. His nephew, he had posted, Hassan says Collargate won't have any impact on his mainstream media favorability.
Do you think MSM will change their views on you after this? I feel like you were doing good, making waves in MSM lately. No. If you noticed a lot of the outlets that have like covered this or attempted to cover this without any sort of consideration for like defamation or whatsoever, it's been like Fox News, New York Post, shit like that. And it's also so objectively untrue that it doesn't really matter ultimately. I think it was Gutfeld that even covered it as well. The Hollywood Reporter covered the story, I know. And it's really funny because like they went to PETA, and PETA is like one of the most militant, like pro animal rights organizations out there. And it's really funny because it's like PETA is one of the most militant animal rights organizations. Hollywood Reporter didn't even ask me for it. For you know, my take on it or anything like that, which you're supposed to do. That's like what journalism is supposed to do. That's what journalists are supposed to do. And it's interesting, they went directly to PETA, and then PETA fucking PETA straight up was like, he says he doesn't use one, and we really hope that is the case. Instead of just being like, yeah, he definitely uses one, we should kill him or whatever, which is what you would expect normally. But I think it's like low key. PETA's been an ally in the past as well.
I love how that chatter's like, you're doing so well in the mainstream media lately, as if that's like a giant dub. Bro, if I was like favorable in the mainstream media, I would feel like, oh my gosh, dude, what am I doing wrong? Why am I becoming a corpo sellout? Like, why are they attaching themselves to me like that? You know what I mean? It would be a very undesirable thing, but let me know what you guys think about all that. Those are the updates. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. See you in the comments here and in the next one. Have a great rest of your weekend.